Hey everybody, how you doing? My name is Chana. Welcome to my channel. It's called Chederathome, and it's all about Jewish homeschooling, Jewish home education, whether you homeschool, whether you don't homeschool, just about adding more of that spark of Judaism into your home. And I was requested to make this video, so I want to respond to it. And I was kind of waiting for my kitchen to be a little bit more clean, but it is never going to happen. So we're just going to make this video and you'll see some dirty dishes. Whatever, that's my life, right? That's real life. I hope this is a good intro video for you and that you find this helpful in some way and some of the information useful. So the first thing that I wanted to share with you that's in our kitchen at all times is this. Tzedakah pushka, tzedakah box. It's from PJ Library, but really you can use, anything for tzedakah, and it's on my counter, and it just sits there. It's probably better if it was attached to the wall so it doesn't take up counter space, but whatever, that's fine. So, and I also have this in my kitchen at all times. It's called a chitas. I don't know if you can see the letters there. They kind of got worn out. I don't really use it that much, honestly, but it sits in my kitchen and it's there. The point is that there's a holy book in my kitchen to kind of make it more of a spiritual place. So the tzedakah box and this chitas. So what is a chitas? It's a book. It's all Hebrew. It has a full 5 books of the Torah in it. And it also has the full, all of Tehillim, the book of Psalms. It has a Siddur, full Siddur. There is a book of Tanya, which is basically the, it's kind of like the Torah of Chabad Hasidic philosophy. So there's a full Tanya in here. There's a couple other things. And it just sits on my counter. Basically, it says in Pirkei Avos, which is Ethics of Our Fathers, that there are 3 pillars that the world stands on, and that's Torah, Tefillah, Tzedakah. So words of Torah, which would be this, because there's the full Torah in here, all the 5 books. Tefillah, there's a full Siddur in here, and then Tzedakah for the pushka, the Tzedakah box. So just to add those 3 pillars into our kitchen. And that's a really good base if you're ever looking to add more spirituality to anything. Those 3 pillars. Just think Torah, Tefillah, Tzedakah. Those 3 pillars will add spirituality to anything. So the question is, what makes a kitchen kosher, right? And the main thing is that there's a separation of meat and milk, and then also just kosher ingredients. It says in the Torah not to cook a cow in its mother's milk. And from that verse, it's expounded upon in the Talmud, in the oral tradition, which has been passed along generation to generation since the Torah was given. We were given also the oral Torah, which was then written down in a large volume of books called the Talmud. That's the oral tradition, all written down for us. And in it, it expounds upon that verse, which says we cannot mix dairy, anything dairy, with any meat, including chicken includes meat, but fish does not include, so meat or poultry. We don't mix with anything dairy. So in a kosher kitchen, the 2 are separate. Just as a side note, the mitzvah of not mixing meat and milk, more of the spirituality behind it, there's really no specific explanation. It's kind of one of those laws that we follow because Hashem told us to. But one understanding of it that I've heard that helps me connect more to that mitzvah is that with meat you have to kill something, and you think of dairy, something is born, so that represents life. You don't want to mix the 2, the killing with the life. So behind me is our dairy counter. In our kitchen, we have 2 counters. We have a dairy counter. Actually, my husband built it. You can see the metal pieces. We had all these big plans of putting in drawers and stuff, but whatever, that's fine. We just have a counter for now. And you don't need a separate counter. There's definitely ways to do it, but In our family, it just works because we don't eat that much dairy, so we just have this counter and that toaster oven behind us. And I just make like cheese sandwiches and pizza, and I can make lasagna in the toaster oven also. It just saves on dishes, just use like paper plates and whatever. So we don't have a huge like dairy section with all these different pots and pans, but definitely separate pots and pans for dairy and for meats. You wouldn't use the same pot. You wouldn't make like mac and cheese in the same pot that you would make like a beef stew, okay? So I'm going to turn the camera around so you can see my meat side of the counter. So I just turned the camera around. Our kitchen is just like it's kind of like a rectangle. It's not a huge kitchen. And that one small counter you saw was the dairy, and then on this side we keep our meat. Please don't mind the dishes that are in the sink and all over, because there is just no way, no how I'm gonna ever not have an empty sink. So here we go. Here is our meat side. I mean, it's just, you know, counters. It looks, you know, like a regular kitchen. And everything on this side is for meat and parve stuff. We have a stove and an oven and counter and a sink, and all this stuff is everything to do with meat. And parve, which means it's neither meat nor dairy. Fish is parve, eggs is parve, rice, like those kinds of things that, you know, are like neutral. We do all of our cooking and everything over here, and I was actually vegetarian for 11 years of my life. And when I was vegetarian, we had actually a larger dairy kitchen, and then we had the toaster oven and like a little counter for the meat, which my husband would use. But now, since I started eating meat, we, you know, flip-flop. So we just have a small dairy section and now a bigger meat section. We keep our counters separate, but you don't have to do that. Like, a lot of families use the same counters and the same sink for meat and dairy, and their counters would just be not kosher, which you can totally do. But you have to be careful of one thing, and I wanted to share with you the concept called Yad Soledes Bo. Yad Soledes Bo means if you can touch the, like, let's say you're making a pot of rice, okay? Let's say you can touch the pot and it's so hot that you have to move your hand away. That's called Yad Soledes Bo. That's the temperature that means that what's called a tam, or a taste, can transfer. So the non-kosher counter, could transfer up into the pot and into the food. And then, well, it might not become not kosher, but you just have to be careful of it. You'd have to ask your, you know, you have to ask your own rabbi what to do if that ever happens. But it's something definitely you have to be aware of if you're using the same counter space for dairy and for meat. But for example, if you have a pot that you use for meat and you made, you know, meat in it, and then you put it down on your counter, which was designated as a not kosher counter, which is, again, totally fine. That's just how you would use the same counter for meat and dairy. You would have to be careful of Yad Soledes Bo, because the tam, or taste, from that counter could transfer into that pot if that pot was super, super hot. But let's say that you did do something and you made a mistake and you put the pot on the wrong counter, or you took the spoon and mixed it in the wrong pot or whatever. Not to worry, it happens to everybody. It happens to me. We've all made, you know, mistakes. It's all good. It's actually what I've learned in my years keeping a kosher kitchen, was that it actually is pretty hard to make something not kosher and that you'd have to throw it away. So always ask your rabbi, because there's just a lot of ways and reasons why things are okay. But always ask. And one last thing that I wanted to share with you about keeping a kosher kitchen was just learn. Like, don't worry, don't stress, just do your best. The first thing is just separating the meat and dairy and making sure you're not mixing the two, and then, you know, build up from there. And then also just buying kosher ingredients from the store, making sure it has the proper hechsher, what it's called, like kosher symbol on it, so that you can rely that what's in the package or in the product that you're buying,
They did not have any mixtures of meat or dairy, and also did not mix any non-kosher products in there. So that's basically it. It's actually not as overwhelming as I thought. When I first started out, I was so hypersensitive to everything, but you don't really have to be. It's actually pretty simple, and you just kind of get into a rhythm of it, and then it just becomes part of your life. And it's really a beautiful thing, you know, just making food becomes a holy experience. The last thing I wanted to share with you was books to learn about keeping a kosher kitchen. So this book is a Feldheim Publishing book. It's called Illustrated Guides to Jewish Law, The Kosher Kitchen. And this was actually one of the books that my husband was given when he was converting. He had to read this book. It's really, really simple. It breaks it down so simply, and it tells you so much, okay? So, and it gives you pictures, okay? And it's just very simple, easy language to understand. So that's this book. And then the other book that I want to share with you is this one. It's called The Kosher Kitchen. And this was given to me by my rabbi, who has been such an influential force in my life. And I'm so forever thankful. But this was one of the books that he gave me. And it's called The Kosher Kitchen, okay? Also very, very simple. And it just breaks down the laws of meat and dairy. And it also has pictures here, like this. Like just little pictures everywhere. But, you know, it's not a kid's book. These are not kids' books. These are for you. And I wanted to just say, just keep learning. As you keep learning and reading more books and getting more information from this place and that place, it all kind of comes together in your head, and then it makes sense. So it's kind of overwhelming at first. I remember when I first started reading this book, it was really overwhelming. And it was a lot of information to understand. But just keep going. Take it slow, one step at a time. Don't rush into it, otherwise it's going to be way too much too fast, and it's just not going to happen. So, but just keep learning and learn everything. So I hope this video was helpful for you. And if you have any questions that I didn't answer, please let me know, and I'll be happy to answer. Okay, take care. Have a good weekend. Shabbat Shalom.